Hi everyone, Dominic Green from Flexicon, and I have with me today Rob Wallace, our applications engineer, going to dive a bit deeper into the supply chain disruption that we mentioned in the last video and really focus on critical minerals and what is occurring at the moment, which is governments really looking to shore up not only the supply but also the processing and refinement of those. And with that comes, government incentives. In America, it might be the Inflation Reduction Act. We've got similar in Australia and in Europe too. So I just wanted to take some time today, Rob, if we can, discuss the space, but then also talk about the common applications and where we kind of fit in.
Okay, yeah, thanks for having me, Dom. Looking forward to it.
Cool. All right, well, let's just jump straight into it. What would be the main application that we really fit in with here in the mining industry?
The biggest quantity of inquiry that we get and, projects that we get actively involved with are filling of intermediate bulk containers. And that would be bulk bags would be the highest quantity we see.
Right. What are the main considerations that you take into account when you're approaching a filling project then?
There's a handful of key criteria that we're looking to understand when it comes to a project like this. I would say that the capacity is the most important.
Right, makes sense.
By capacity, I would mean, how many bags or containers they're trying to fill per hour or in a given time frame, or the overall capacity in tons per hour of the plant.
What's the implication there then? Is it mainly just let's put 10 of them in a row? What's the main consideration in terms of our equipment?
Yeah, it could be how you design a single filling line in terms of how you're getting material into that system, or it could be a case of you need, five identical lines all operating in parallel to meet that throughput requirement.
Yeah, okay, cool. All in a single bagging house that might be able to be operated by one operator, for instance.
Yeah, it's a very common arrangement that we see out in the field where you've got a warehouse with, parallel bagging lines and you've got a series of operators just operating them in tandem.
Okay. Outside of duplicating the systems, what are some of the other things that we do? I mean, we've obviously got, ways of semi-automating the systems.
Yeah, it's the level of automation and the accessories that you fit to the system. So you can have anything from a very simple frame that, doesn't have any of the bells and whistles.
Right, yeah.
Or you could move
up.
That
might be quite a common thing for a pilot plant where they don't have a great deal of capital to spend at the beginning, right?
Yeah, and a very simple system will achieve the goal. Just at maybe it's a little bit more work for the operator and the throughput's, not as high as it would be in a full-scale plant. And then if you're really trying to achieve a high throughput through the system, you start adding accessories that help automate the process.
Okay, what are they?
There's pallet dispensers, so you might have a magazine of pallets in a pallet dispenser and it's loading those pallets onto the bulk bag filler.
Yep.
As opposed to, someone manually doing that with a forklift.
Yep.
And then once you've loaded the pallet onto the filler, you're then putting the product in the bag. And then after that, you might put a series of accumulation conveyors in there to take those filled bags and, stage them for the system to then...
So you don't have to have a forklift coming back every 5 minutes?
No, you have a series of accumulation conveyors. You might accumulate 2, 4, 6 bags, whatever it might be, and then a forklift can come over at their leisure, take those filled bags and, transfer them away to somewhere else.
Right, so outside of increased capacity and automation to help with that, what are some of the other characteristics that we take into account when designing the system? The
material itself would be important, as the industry that we work in suggests, bulk material handling, you need to understand the material. How does it flow? What's its bulk density? What's its moisture content? What's its form? Is it a powder, a granular pellet? All those things are really important in everything that we do.
Right, and where's it coming from? If it's coming from a filter press, right, it's going to have a certain moisture content. It's going to have irregular shapes. It's going to be pretty hard to get it to flow from the filter press, for instance, down into the bottom of a bag uniformly, right?
Exactly. And what that material is, where it comes from, and its characteristics, it's the core of everything that we do, understanding the material.
Well, take that one for example then. What would you go about implementing in the system if you were dealing with a sticky filter cake?
You would try to design a hopper. Let's say we're putting that material through a hopper for some reason before a bulk bag filler. You're making sure that the hopper sidewalls are steep enough. You might need to put a low coefficient of friction lining within the hopper to cope with that. It might be the outlet size and the valve style on the outlet of that hopper we need to select all those components according to that material.
Right, okay, cool. And that will make sense. And we've had experience in doing all of those things that you just mentioned there, right?
Experience, and they can be the tricky applications to deal with.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you might be trying to do the system will look completely different if you're handling something that is, say, a dry, fluffy, aeratable powder.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And what are some of the features of the bulk bag filler? I mean, we've got the densification deck that can maximize fill in a bag. Can you just explain how that kind of works and what the principle is?
Densification decks, I would say, are on 95% of all bulk bag filling systems that we sell. They work really well. The principle of that is you're densifying, as the name suggests, or de-aerating the product within the bag to maximize the fill percentage within that bag. So you're removing the air, densifying the product, hence you can fit more material by weight in that bag.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense, right? And then when they're putting it into a container, that double stack is basically getting rid of any airspace, and they're not shipping air for free. Yeah,
exactly. It also has added benefits of making the bag more stable as you're filling it into it. You've got a 1 metre, 1.5 metre tall bag there. It needs to be stable so that when the forklift driver's moving that around the factory, it doesn't have a chance to topple over.
Some products are 2 tonne, right?
Yeah, so if you can densify the product, make the bag nice and stable, well filled, you get more in the bag and you make the operation safer.
Okay, so really it's all about filling that final product, or that product that's been lightly processed, ready to go on to the next space. What are some of the common container types that we see being used? Because it's not just bulk bags, really, is it? I mean, we've got the drums. People are filling drums with this product.
Drums are also very common. I think the use case for a drum is probably, again, down to the material form. Maybe it's something that isn't compatible with a bulk bag, too hot, too chemically corrosive, reactive, something like that. So drums would be the next most common intermediate bulk container that we see.
Completely separate unit, or I mean, we've got ways of retrofitting bulk bag unloaders, fillers, right, to take drums as well.
The designs that we have here at Flexicon, they are quite smart in the way that they're all based off a bulk bag filling station. So most processing facilities would be handling maybe bulk bags and drums. So we've got a range of filling station designs that cater for bulk bags, but then have a swing-in attachment or an attachment that caters for drums. And you can fill a single 44-gallon drum on a pallet, and then we've got an arrangement where you're filling 4 44-gallon drums simultaneously in a semi-automated system.
Yeah, brilliant. And then the downstream automation still makes sense, right? Put a pallet with the 4 drums, and then that goes off and gets accumulated. Yeah,
as much as I don't want to, oversimplify, there's cookie cutter solutions that we've got here that are tried and tested in the field and work with bulk bags, drums, we've boxes, tote bins. They're also another common intermediate bulk container that is used.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we've filled the product. If it's going on and say going from a miner who's done light processing of that material and got it down to a couple of components, right? He's then passing it on to another customer who might be a refiner. He's getting it from a raw aluminium ore, for instance, and then putting that and refining it down to high purity stuff. We obviously need to then unload all of those containers, right? So we play in that space as well.
Yeah, you've gone to all this effort of putting the product into this container. Now you've got to get it out.
Right.
And fortunately, we can help with that too. So we've got, again, tried and tested range of decanting or unloading bits of equipment that we can use.
Right, okay, so it's the same common types, right? If we're saying bulk bags and drums, what's the difference between, let's just touch on, say it's a bulk bag unloader, for instance. What are the different options that we have there, and why do we select what?
The core range that we have would be a hoist loaded version. So, you've got an integral monorail with a hoist and trolley affixed to it that you use to elevate and maneuver the bag above the downstream equipment, hopper, tank, whatever that might be.
Yep.
And then if the customer's on a maybe more budget-friendly option and they've got forklifts available, we've got a forklift-loaded version where you pick the bag up with a forklift, load it into the frame, and away you go.
Right, okay, cool. And these things, I suppose, we've seen and used them in multiple different environments. We might have one of these bulk bag unloaders sitting outside with an awning over it. That might be a bit of a common application we see.
All the time, and the frequency of those requests is increasing. But when you look at putting one of these systems outside, you've got a bulk bag, which is a flexible container, right? Doesn't really appreciate being out in the weather.
Might be a powder that sucks up moisture.
Yeah, so we can custom design for a project, a weather enclosure, a cladded enclosure to go around that bulk bag discharger. Common application for us.
Right, so that's hanging a bag up, dropping it down into an intermediary hopper. What about the drums and how we interface and empty them?
They're a little bit different to a bulk bag discharger in the fact that you need to invert that vessel to get the product to flow out of it.
Right.
You're not going to bust the bottom off a drum to empty the product out. So drum tip is it's a carriage. You load the drum into the carriage.
Yep.
Then uses a hydraulic power pack to elevate and invert that drum to tip it into the downstream hopper.
Right, and that can be done in a dust-tight manner as well.
Yeah, we've got a tip-tight option, which has a hood that clamps down on the top of the drum, so you've got zero dust release while you're emptying it, and then for your not-so-dusty products, open chute is the model that we've got to offer.
Yeah, right, cool. So that's drums, bulk bags. I mean, we frequently come across people. So this is the refining process. We might be putting additives rather than the raw material in, right? A lot of those come in the 20 kilo bags, and some of those products are quite nasty, some of them are quite acidic. So we've got a range of 20 kilo bag unloading stations as well, right?
We would call that range our manual dump stations or manual, because it's not just 2 25 kilo bags or something like that. So operator stands there, rips a bag, pours it into the hopper. We've got a range of them with accessories that we can offer, and I guess those accessories would be integrated dust collection to help protect your operators.
Yeah, okay. What else in terms of those hazardous materials? What are other options that we commonly kind of apply?
When you've got a really dangerous product that you're trying to limit exposure to, you've got a glove box compartment, which is a mechanical or physical separation between the operator and the product. Integrated waste bag compactors. So once you've emptied that bag or box, whatever it might be, you need to deal with the empty container. Right. So a waste bag compactor sort of bundles or bales them up to be managed. Really
removing the operator from the exposure risk altogether.
Yeah, which I think every company these days is aiming for that sort of thing. Dust containment, operator safety is key in everything that we do. Yeah.
So we've unloaded the container. We then have it in an intermediary hopper, whether it be that bag dump station or underneath the bulker bag. We've obviously got a whole range of different conveying types. Maybe we can just touch on them quickly.
Most commonly, as you've just alluded to, once you've got that product out of the container, whatever it might be, you've got to transfer it somewhere. We've got 3 main conveying technologies that we utilise for our projects: flexible screw conveyor or shaftless auger.
Yep.
Pneumatic conveying, we do lean or dilute phase, both in positive pressure and vacuum, and a mechanical conveyor called a tubular cable conveyor.
Right. So what's going to be the main criteria that you look at when selecting, say, a flex screw? Then what's the main benefits of a flex screw? Obviously, it's cheap and it's fairly easy to install. Yeah,
they can be used on a wide range of materials, very versatile.
Right.
They're the cheapest option that we offer, the most economical option, I should say, that we offer. Good for short conveying distances, line of sight in terms of material in feed to material out feed.
Very few moving parts,
Very few moving parts, great for maintenance.
In those things,
and very versatile, very simple.
Right, so that's the flexible screw conveyor. What might be the main criteria behind selecting a pneumatic system? I'm imagining it's kind of distance and complexity of layout.
Yeah, complexity of layout would be the primary driver there. You might be putting product into the system, into that hopper on ground floor of a facility, and you're trying to transfer it many metres away up a few stories, and something like a screw conveyor is not going to be suitable there. So pneumatic conveying systems can transfer at high rates over long distances with complex layouts, many elbows in that system. Okay, so really in the space we've covered off the cheap, short distance, readily available, easy to install, to highly complex, high throughputs. Where does the TCC, the tubular cable conveyor, fit in? It's a completely separate use case. It's still quite versatile in its layout. Can transfer over reasonable distances through complex geometries. You can have multiple inlets, multiple outlets. They are a great system, very versatile. But their specialist application that we use them in is when the product that you're handling needs to maintain its form throughout the transfer.
Right, and that might be a prill where it's critical that the end user's got it in a certain form because it's dilutes at a certain rate or whatever.
Exactly. So the tubular cable conveyor it's a mechanical conveyor. A cable and disc drag the product through the tube at quite a low speed. So it's perfect for those fragile or gentle materials, maintaining their form from one end to the other.
Okay. So we've gone through really filling a product, unloading a product, transporting of that product around the plant. What are other kind of niche applications that we see inside the mining and processing industry?
Yeah, if we hone in on a specific application type or industry that we service, which I guess is out there in your general community use case, but also transposes nicely into the mineral and resource sector, would be water treatment.
Right.
And we've really forged some strong application solutions for that space.
Yeah, so that's kind of a bit of a bread and butter industry, sub-industry for us really, isn't it? And we're used heavily throughout Australia and other regions around the world for that work. So how do we interface then with those systems? What is it that we're doing? We're obviously unloading materials into the water treatment section.
Yeah, the water treatment sector that we're working in, it's usually decanting or unloading of containers, which we've already touched on.
Yeah.
And then it's what we do with that product. You know, we might be taking it from a bulk bag and trying to put it in a day bin, which then we dose or meter that product into a water treatment system, like through a wetting cone or an adductor to treat the water.
Right, so what are some of those common products that we're putting into day bins and dosing in?
If we want to focus on bulk bags, primarily activated carbon, fluoride, they're probably two of your big hitters in that space. Other products that we handle frequently would be limes. Hydrated lime is another common one. They can be received in your bulk bags. They can also be received in bulk truck. So big tanker truck turns up full of lime, and they've got to then get that into, say, a silo, which is where they're storing it on site.
Right.
So same, dry bulk material handling. We're transferring it from a vessel to something else, but just different equipment we're interfacing with.
What are some of the main challenges that you see in this space? I know pack in particular is actually quite a pain to handle, right?
Yeah, very, very dusty, very, very fluid, and also doesn't flow all that well if you don't have the right equipment that you've selected.
Right.
So dust is, I would say, in all our projects, very important, and we can utilise all our experience in that space to select equipment for pack that makes the operator's life as...
What are some of the particular features that we probably hone in on pack, particularly, for instance?
To use a little bit of Flexicon jargon, it's our teletube, which is the dust-tight mechanical connection between the bulk bag outlet spout and the hopper below. Creates a positive seal so that once you untie that bag and let the product flow, you've got no dust that's escaped because it's a positive sealing mechanism.
Yeah, for sure. And so we even use the double wall version of that one, right? That we can put some negative pressure when we're taking the bag off, for instance, minimising the dust even further.
Where there's a need to really control dust to the nth degree, it might be like a hazardous chemical or a toxic chemical. Fluoride's a good example of that. The double wall teletube provides that extra layer of protection, especially when coupled with something like a dust collector.
Yeah, cool. All right, so that's water treatment for the mining. What we have noticed in the industry is people looking to make use of materials that have been partly processed and still have a little bit more to give. I mean, we have mines over in Western Australia at the moment where they're looking to extract further, say, rare earths that are inside post-processed material sitting in stockpiles out in the rain, right? We're noticing that's probably a trend that's picking up a little bit more with some of these more niche rare earths. So what piece of equipment, what kind of systems do we have to satisfy that?
This has been an interesting space for us, I think, over the last, say, give or take 10 years or so, where we've seen a need for mobile or skid mounted pieces of kit.
Right.
They provide, pretty good versatility, flexibility in terms of your on-site operations.
Yeah.
So we've, over the last 10 years or so, as I said, we've done many numbers of systems where you've got an in-feed hopper transfer mechanism into a bulk bag filler on a skid.
Right, okay.
So that can be moved from shed to shed on a processing facility if the use case doesn't require fixed plant in each of those sheds.
Yep.
And
it's not being fed by fixed plant, right? This is a stockpile sitting on the floor.
Yeah, so it could be front-end loader, skid steer loader, scooping up product, buckets of that product off the ground.
Existing belt conveyors out in the field.
Yeah, existing belt conveyors. Could be parked under the outfeed of a silo.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Right, so with that use case then, we might not necessarily be in internal stockpiles where we've got power available, compressed air available. Yeah. I'm imagining we've got a way of keeping those things self-powered out in the field.
Yeah, if you're not fortunate enough to park one of these things in a shed where you've got a compressed air supply and a three-phase, power plug that you can plug into, we can fit them with onboard power generation, whether that's a generator or something to provide your three-phase power, or it could be an onboard air compressor to do all your compressed air usage needs.
Right, and so those systems look very similar to the fixed plant version, right, just on a skid?
Exactly. So if you were to just an example use case here, start up a pilot plan or a small-scale operation that then morphed into something bigger as time goes on, those components aren't wasted. You can then use them and add to them in a modular configuration for a higher throughput. So
right, cool. And I'm imagining we can fit all of the different accessories that automate a fixed filling line into those things. If we've got someone out in the field who just wants to have a couple of operators running a front end loader and a Manitou, for instance, for taking the bags away, you can have one operator bagging at his heart's content as quickly as the front end loader can fill him, and then another Manitou having a bit of time. He can accumulate 3 or 4 bags off to the side, and that way the operator can just keep bagging.
So the accessories we touched on right at the start when we were talking about bulk bag filling, so your pallet dispensers and accumulation conveyors, there's absolutely no reason why they can't be made mobile bits of plant too. So,
and we have done that for customers in the past, right?
All the time.
Yeah.
So modularized accessories for these bulk bag fillers, like separate skids. So you could disassemble it, chuck it all on the back of a flatbed truck, move it from one site to another.
Yeah.
Deload them, couple them all together, plug and play electrical connections, and you're ready to go real quick.
Yeah, right. That's invaluable. And like you say, you can then retrofit them to a fixed plant later in the future if it goes there.
Yeah, you could either just bolt the skids down to the ground, making it fixed plan, or take those bits of equipment, bolt them directly to the ground, and off you go.
Yeah. Okay, so we've touched on most of what we do in that mining and processing and refining space. The emergence of this being a need for each country to develop these capacities is going to put increased pressure on processing chemicals, for instance, right, and mining explosives. So what if we take chemicals, for instance, what are some of the main applications that we see around the chemical space?
Industrial chemicals is a real big sector for Flexicon. We field a lot of inquiry, we complete a lot of projects in that space, and I think common materials we'd be looking at would be urea, different process salts, ammonium nitrate.
Acids of different types.
Acids is a real common one
for
helping to process or refine these minerals.
Yeah, okay. And chemicals, I mean, my mind, and especially, say, explosive manufacturing, my mind jumps to hazardous areas, whether it be dust zones and gas zones. So we've obviously had a vast amount of experience in those spaces, right?
Dealing with hazardous areas, I think, is probably a rising or a more commonly understood topic these days in the industry. I'd say go back 10 years, maybe hazardous areas weren't so well, they weren't so prevalent in the discussions that we're having.
Yeah.
But these days, it's a very common occurrence for us, and we are quite well versed in how to deal with those situations.
So with those hazardous areas, we've obviously had a fair amount of experience, not only in Australia but internationally, right?
Yeah, so here in Australia, as everyone would be aware, we're following IECX as mandated in the Australian standards, but being a global company, our colleagues over in Europe, they're dealing with the ATEX directives, and then Flexicon in America has got the NFPA guidelines that they're having to be compliant with. So as much as they're all targeting the same requirements, they all have
quite different, right?
They're all quite different, but fortunate for us, global company, global outreach, we've got the resources in-house to understand and comply with all those requirements.
Yeah, right. Not only from a manufacturing standpoint, but from a paperwork compliance
Yeah,
standpoint.
that's half of the challenge, I think, when it comes to this.
Yeah, three-quarters of it.
Three-quarters. It's understanding the requirements and then being able to complete all the documentation that you need to.
Yeah. So also what springs to mind when we're talking about chemical industry is, materials of construction, how things are reacting, corrosion, all those types of things, right?
It could be the environment that the equipment's going into, or it could be the material itself. But understanding both of those elements, I guess, is key to selecting what do you build this equipment out of?
Yeah.
Is it 304 grade stainless? Is it 316? Does it need to be something more exotic than that?
Yeah.
Or how do you finish the goods that you've manufactured?
Right. So we've got experience in doing special coatings, right? In wet spray.
Wet spray, different thicknesses, different paint regimes,
Right.
and the paperwork that comes with that.
Right.
Hot dip galvanizing is a common one. It really just depends on the environment and the material that you're handling.
But we can cover all of them, right?
I don't think we've faced a challenge that we couldn't overcome.
Okay. Right. So what about how we interface with chemicals? Can be vastly complicated, right? How do we go with interfacing with all of the different types of requirements? It might be an end-to-end process, right? How do we attack that? Because obviously we don't have a piece of equipment to suit every application or every need.
No, so we've got the ability to do custom designs for a particular project if the need arises. I guess that could be a custom structure, custom hopper.
Yep.
Or there could also be the need to incorporate a bit of process equipment that...
Right, from a third party.
Yeah, that Flexicon doesn't manufacture, but we have extensive experience with. I guess some examples there could be foreign body detection to protect the quality of the product that we're processing. Right,
okay. Or if they get a product that comes in a condition that they can't handle, say a processed salt in a 20 kilo bag that it's just not going to fit in any process system.
Yeah, so a hygroscopic material that absorbs moisture and makes that bulk material go hard, common issue for us to overcome. So if you're looking at 20 kilo bags in particular, and you might want to dump that into a hopper.
Yep.
Not much good as a big 20 kilo block, so
there.
Might need to integrate something like a lump breaker in there, which basically just
gets it into a form that you can then put down the line.
Eviscerates that product and turns it back into some sort of free-flowing powder to then be further processed downstream, stored, batched, dosed, whatever it might be.
Right. And the complexity of controlling and interfacing with all of those, and this is just as pertinent probably to the refining process as it is to chemical, but controls, the way that we control probably is a large factor of how these things end up working in the field in the end run, right?
Yeah, it's always an area of our projects that's an interesting one, the electrical and automation side of things. We've got a team of in-house mechanical and project engineers that deal with all the facets that we've been talking about today. We've also got an in-house team of electrical engineers that will design and build and program control systems.
Right.
That can be anything from a simple start, stop, push button station to a pretty...
full SCADA integration, right?
full SCADA integration with, all the smarts that people come to expect these days.
Yeah, and so that's a point worth touching on. Industry 4.0, being able to have sensing technology throughout the equipment that can give the operator or the end user a way of data logging, and that's something that we kind of touch on in our equipment.
I think we're quite flexible when it comes to that side of things these days. Not every operation wants to know every small bit of feedback that their system's got, and they might be on a budget. So we can do anything from quite a simple system that has the need to have instrumentation built into it to putting all the bells and whistles on it to get all the feedback.
Temperature, pressure in conveying and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, and that plays into, as you said, Industry 4.0, like the IoT movement that's out there these days.
Yeah.
So we are happy to work with a customer and their requirements to make the system as smart as it needs to be.
Yep, makes sense. All right, so we touched on before about a 20 kilo bag that gets hardened during transport, for instance, and needs to be broken up, but the same stands true for a bulk bag, right?
Probably even more so, I think. You get these bulk bags of material that are imported, say from overseas. That's quite common these days with your processed chemicals that are brought in. Might be bags, stacked in a container, shipped halfway across the world. They've absorbed some moisture, turn up to site.
We touched on that in the last video as well about the supply chains breaking down, product coming from a completely different region. Might be the same chemical, but it's coming in a different form, whether that be from transport or no anti-caking agent or something like that.
Yeah, and then if you load one of them into a bulk bag, discharges, open up the bottom of it and product doesn't flow out, that's a problem that needs to be solved.
Yeah, makes sense. So how does it go about doing that job?
So the bulk bag conditioner in short, is a hydraulically driven unit. It's got opposing pressure plates that impart force on the bag and basically just through brute force break up this solid clump of material within the bulk bag. And they don't completely turn it back into a free-flowing material, but it gets it to the point where you can get it out of the bag.
Put it in a hopper.
Further process it, and basically take unusable hardened bags of material back to something that can be processed.
Yeah, okay. So these, I think 90% of what we sell in that space is the same unit, right? Over and over again. We even have a few of them ready to sell in the yard, but these can also be customized to suit the application, right?
Yeah, we've got a cookie cutter solution, so to speak. As you said, got some ready to go in the factory right now. If you have a particularly corrosive environment, the material's corrosive, might want to change out the paint finish. We might want to...
So same as the chemical?
Same as the chemical thing we spoke about. You might have an incompatible material on that unit that doesn't react well with something in that environment. So we might need to sub that out for a suitable alternative.
Right.
You might want to automate the process, put some conveyors in there to allow a higher throughput through the conditioner.
Yeah, makes sense.
You might want to make the system a little bit smarter with a light curtain instead of the hinged interlock doors. All those customizations are possible, and we've done them many times in the past.
Yeah, brilliant. So these are kind of standalone units, right? So it stands to reason you could just chuck this from one site to another. If one site's got great product and it doesn't need it anymore, but another's getting dodgy product, they can just ship it across and plug it in and go. Happens
all the time. So they're basically skid mounted, for want of a better term. Pick it up with a forklift, load it on the back of a truck. It's all self-contained with an integrated flying power lead and quite easily moved around the place.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, so I think we've probably touched on a fair amount of the different applications that we see in this space. There'd be niche ones that we haven't really touched on, but this is really coming about from that supply chain breakdown. Most of these things are pertinent, but on the critical minerals front, the governments are really incentivizing. So we'd encourage everybody, if you're playing in this space, go and have a look to see what your local governments are offering in terms of incentives. It can give you that extra capital push to set up the plant. It might even just be a pilot plant. We've got links in our description for the video of the main ones that we mentioned before, but I'd encourage everyone to go out and have a look at that because it's a space that's really hot at the moment.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of activity in that space, both inquiry and projects that we're completing on as we speak.
Right, and then reach out to us, free consultation. We've got experts around the globe, right?
Yeah, there's a team of applications engineers and salespeople based here in Australia and in the region, and also throughout the other countries where Flexicon operate. And we look forward to helping everyone on the next project.
Right, thanks for your time, Rob.
It's been good, Dom. Appreciate it.
Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.